2021 has come to an end, and that also wraps up the first year that I've been to manga actively. So I decided what better way to end off the year with ranking all the manga that I read this year, and by default, all the manga that I've ever read on a single tier list. So here's kind of going over the series that we'll be ranking today. These aren't all the manga that I've actually read because I'm not going to be including manga that I've read in conjunction or after the anime adaptation or after watching the anime. So examples: Parasite, Akamega Kill, Assassination Classroom. Those series. As much as I love those manga, I did read those either at the same time while watching the anime or after. So I don't really consider those manga only experiences. The next thing, disclaimer that I want to give is that, well, this is my opinion. So this is not an objective list. This is solely my opinion. Everybody has different tastes and such like that. And so let's go over the tiers. We have up top, we have the favorites, amazing, very enjoyable, worth reading, meh, and dropped. So my approach to this tier list isn't going to be a direct translation of my scores on Mal, if you've seen them, or Anilist. 10 out of 10 doesn't mean an S tier, 9 out of 10 doesn't mean an A tier. Just take these tiers as they are read. The favorites, amazing. I don't really have that same approach when putting things on a tier list because when you rate things on Mal, I rate them just solely by itself within the standards of its own series. I rate it out of 10 or 100. On a tier list, you're comparing it to pretty much all the other series. So there might be cases where um, a manga has, or I guess two manga have the same score, but they're on different tier lists, or the opposite, where two manga have different scores but on the same tier. So that's going to happen because, we have only 6 intervals of grading right here. And on Mal, you have the option of grading things out of 10 or in any list and stuff like that. So, um, with that said, all those disclaimers are done. Let's just get into it then. So first off, we have Claymore, the first manga I've ever read. Claymore is amazing. It has phenomenal artwork, and it probably has my favorite transformations out of all the manga I've read that has, creatures that, you know, transform and stuff like that. It has a great quantity of action, and it was a really good place to start. I did read other series at the same time, but Claymore, as far as I know, was the first real manga only experience that I just kind of opened up and started reading. Love Claymore, dark fantasy shonen, very good. Noblesse. So Noblesse is a manhwa actually, and I did read Noblesse early on because it was accessible on Webtoon for free. I ended up dropping Noblesse, and kind of moving forward, when I say that I drop a series, it doesn't mean that's worse than meh or it's like necessarily the worst out of all the manga. But normally when I drop a series, it just means my motivation fizzles out. In this case of Noblesse, it was actually a pretty funny series, surprisingly. I kind of like the tone and the artwork is very good, but the plot stagnated a little bit too much. 120 something chapters that I read, and I was more interested in reading other things. And speaking of more interested in reading other things, I was more interested in reading Record of Ragnarok, which I found very enjoyable. I love the premise of Record of Ragnarok. The idea that humanity's like most well-known people, such as Adam, the first human, or Jack the Ripper, for example, are fighting against some of those well-known gods, such as Zeus, um, Odin, Buddha, Bishamoten, all that. So I really like the premise of Record of Ragnarok, and I look forward to more good things in the future. All right, I'm just kind of setting a timer right now because I have a limited time on my recording, my first recording. Omniscient Reader. Omniscient Reader was one of the first manhwa I've ever read, and it's also amazing. If you had asked me a few years ago, or not a few years ago, earlier this year, I probably would have put this at the favorites. But I'm bringing it down to amazing because I found that I prefer to read series kind of like not necessarily binging, but I don't prefer reading week to week, which is how I've been reading Omniscient Reader pretty much most of the year. And so that experience has kind of gone down because I think one of Omniscient Reader's biggest strengths is how it's not necessarily a series of that many highs, where there's like, oh, that was an amazing chapter or whatever. I think it's just very consistently engaging narrative. And I feel like that strength is more prominent when you're kind of reading, 10, 15 chapters a day until you finish rather than chapter to chapter, week to week. So, but with that said, it's still an amazing manhwa, and it's one of the best that I've read. And definitely check it out. It's definitely underrated, I feel, as a manhwa. Spy Family. We have now officially come across the first of my favorites. I mean, I made a video on Spy Family. I don't think I need to talk about it more than I already have. What I will say is that, kind of me talking about earlier how I don't prefer reading week to week, it's just not something that I'm used to yet. Spy Family, Tatsuya Endo knows how to make every single chapter feel worth it. You know what I mean? Feel worth the wait, whether or not it is 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, sometimes the occasional 2 months. Every single chapter just feels worth it. Not that to say that every chapter is like amazing, you know, top tier. But once again, just seeing all these characters, you know, interact with each other and just kind of be true to their characters. I love Spy Family. Like, it's amazing, man. Don't need to go into too much detail. Solo Leveling is arguably one of the most popular manhwa right now, and it's very enjoyable. Not my favorite, but it's got some great artwork. It's very satisfying, and you know, it's kind of like a power fantasy type thing, RPG elements. Very enjoyable. Like I said, not my favorites, but it's popular for a reason. It's deserved. Chainsaw Man, also very enjoyable. I think that Chainsaw Man has this chaotic feel to it that can catch a lot of eyes, but also it maintains this level of accessibility to it, which is why it's really good. Artwork is really good. It's fast paced, which is nice, but sometimes I feel like in the second half it was too fast paced to a fault, which is kind of what's holding it back. But still, regardless, a very good new gen. Very happy for it, and I wish all the best for the anime adaptation. The Promised Neverland, also, well, not also. Well, I wouldn't consider Chainsaw Man one of my favorite new gens, but without a doubt, The Promised Neverland is one of my favorite new gens. Very unique shonen, you know, not what you'd expect just by looking at this first volume right here. Some great storytelling, some great dialogue, some great characters. I'm actually rereading it right now, and I would actually, on my second read, I'd put it at amazing, but because pretty much most of these series I haven't reread, I'm gonna be fair and just go based on my first read, and on my first read of The Promised Neverland, I would put it at very enjoyable. Tokyo Ghoul is also another very enjoyable series. I don't think I need to go into much detail. Amazing artwork. I love the exploration of ghouls and such like that. Don't really need to go into too much detail why the Tokyo Ghoul manga is really good, especially over the anime, man. And I did Tokyo Ghoul, Tokyo Ghoul Re separately because I think those two are two different experiences. I think Tokyo Ghoul is worth reading. Not as good as Tokyo Ghoul because, like I said, I prefer the kind of the exploration of ghouls and how they exist in society over in Tokyo Ghoul Re, over all the CCG politics I didn't really enjoy as much. With that said, most of the iconic panels that we see circulating on Twitter every other day does happen in Tokyo Ghoul Re. Superior artwork, so it is worth reading in that sense. So we've come to it. Hell's Paradise, probably my favorite manga right now. You know, I don't think Hell's Paradise is necessarily doing anything to flip the shonen standard on top of its head, but I still think it's a pretty unique shonen that just hit all the right notes for me. When you're talking about cast of characters, pacing, story, artwork style, paneling, quantity of action, quality of action, it just really hit all the right notes for me. Don't really need to go into much detail because I did do a video on Hell's Paradise. But you know, since I read it for the first time, and you know, earlier this year when it finished, I started reading it, and after reading manga for, you know, a year now, not many other series has kind of touched me in the same way Hell's Paradise is. Not in the way that to say that Hell's Paradise is a touching series, but like I said, it just hit all the right notes for me. It's everything that I wanted. Doesn't overstay its welcome. I wish that it was a little bit longer because I feel like it'd be just as popular as the likes of, you know, Chainsaw Man or Jujutsu Kaisen or Tokyo Revengers, but it deserves just as much success. And it's by all means my favorite new gen and probably my favorite manga. Vagabond, I'll probably put it in very enjoyable. I think that the artwork is some of the best I've ever seen. This actually is a hot take to put Vagabond in very enjoyable rather than amazing or in the favorites. I will say that I liked it consistently all the way. From start to finish, I consistently enjoyed it. The Sasaki Kojiro arc was very compelling. It poses a lot of interesting questions and themes, you know, about life, death, Mortal Kombat. Miyamoto Musashi is a very interesting character. The reason why it's not an amazing is just because it didn't really reach that many highs for me, and that's once again an unpopular opinion, but it is mine. With that said, I still think Vagabond's very enjoyable, and this is just my opinion, and I'm not even putting it in meh or just worth reading. It's very enjoyable, and I'm sorry that's not an amazing, but that's how it is. So Black Lagoon is interesting because I think that it's almost polarizing for me. When you take the dialogue for the story or the missions and such like that, or I guess all like the politics talk, negotiations, it's pretty bad. that dialogue is so mundane, so boring, so exposition dumping. But in terms of the dialogue with Revi's character and her interactions with other characters, and especially Rock, is amazing. Revi is one of my favorite characters of all time. I love her complexity. She's a character that you know would be hard to get along with, but you understand that those qualities that makes her hard to get along with is what kept her alive when she was young, and it was formed because she grew up, in a dark place. So I think with the cheesy, bombastic action, and then Revi's character to balance out with the pretty bad dialogue outside of it, it probably balances out to very enjoyable. But once again, love Revi. She's an amazing character, one of my favorite MCs of all time, and yeah, really enjoyed Black Lagoon. Mashal, we are just kind of filling up the very enjoyables this time. Manga is really good. Mashal is one of the funniest new gen manga. Just think Rock Lee if he went to Hogwarts. A story about a boy born with no powers, but instead has to make it up with his muscles. Extremely funny, and I really like where the series is going. The artwork is just getting better and better, and this has potential to go up here. Is this tier list in order? If I were to put this in order, it would probably be something like, to be really quick about it, I'm just gonna do this. Yeah. So where was I? Mashal. Yeah, Mashal's really good. One of the best new gens right now. Extremely funny, kind of your One Punch Man-esque humor. Really, really funny. Looking forward to where it goes. So Grand Blue Dreaming. I'm all about consistency when it comes to manga, and there is arguably not many series out there that's more consistent than Grand Blue. Grand Blue is hilarious, whether it's volume to volume or even chapter to chapter. Grand Blue just is so consistent, always putting a smile on my face and making me laugh. The humor is very dramatic and very juvenile, but it really hits the right notes. Like I said, each chapter just kind of gives you something, and I can't really say the same about every single one of these series. Grand Blue is amazing. I think it's better than the anime, and I don't think that's an unpopular opinion, but with that said, Grand Blue has just been such a very consistently great experience, and yeah, without a doubt, one of my favorite manga. It's not peak humor to me, you know that I'm a fan of Gintama, so I don't think that Grand Blue is my favorite example of humor. But like I said, it's just so consistent that I can't help but love it. So yeah, Grand Blue, one of my favorites. All You Need Is Kill is a one-shot. If you've seen the movie Edge of Tomorrow, then this is the manga adaptation of the light novel series that the movie is based off of, and All You Need Is Kill is really good. I own it. Actually, I own most of these manga, or at least a few volumes of most of these manga, by the way. But it's really cool to read a story in its entirety, which you don't get often with manga. At least from the series that I've read, I know there are plenty of one-shots out there. But All You Need Is Kill is good. It's got some great artwork. It's got some nice pacing. And yeah, not much to say other than that. Same with Zombs 100, also another very enjoyable series. It was recently licensed, so I haven't been able to read most of it past the first volume that I own, but it's just kind of like a wholesome take on the zombie genre. Instead of our main character being down in the dumps because the zombie apocalypse is happening, he's happy because a zombie apocalypse means he doesn't have to go to work. So him kind of making a bucket list of all the things he wants to do and just kind of making the best of what is to be hell, making modern hell his heaven, is a really enjoyable take on the zombie genre. So yeah, very good, and I wish the best for the series. Kengan Ashura is amazing. I'll put that there. Oh, actually, these are tied for now. I can't put. Okay, anyways, so Kengan Ashura would be a manga that I would recommend to people if they are skeptical about reading a manga because they prefer, when it comes to action series, if they prefer animation and they don't think that they can get enjoyment from pictures. Kengan Ashura is a series that I would recommend to hopefully get them out of that mindset, because the action and the fights are just drawn so well. The artwork is so raw. It is brutal. It has an understanding of real life physics and anatomy, but it's also not realistic. It's over the top. It's extremely fun. It has such a high quantity of fights that I don't see how you cannot enjoy Kengan Ashura. What's holding it back from becoming one of my favorites is that it did peak by its halfway point. Not to say that everything that happened past its halfway point wasn't great, but I did see, in my opinion, what was the best fight by the second round of the tournament. With that said, Kengan Ashura is amazing. Please read it. It is such an amazing martial arts fighting battle series. over the top action, bloody, brutal, adrenaline, heavy. Love King and Ashura. Love it. It's amazing. Kaiju number 8 was worth reading. It's one of the bigger Shonen Jump Plus series that's out right now, one of the bigger new gens. I believe its first volume broke records and debut sales or something like that. But it's worth reading. Nothing to really grab me yet. I read about at least 40 chapters before I put it on hold because, like I said, I prefer reading things or series in its entirety. But yeah, it's worth reading, and I hear that's getting some good things or more developments. The Gray Man. So The Gray Man for me is the perfect manga for me. And that's because when you take every aspect, which includes its art style, its characters, its paneling, its action, its power system, its humor, pretty much everything about The Gray Man is just something that I feel like I would come up with if I were to create a series. If I were to create a series, it would look a lot like Katsura Hoshino's The Gray Man. And if I were to create my own series, I would use The Gray Man as a big influence because I feel like Katsura Hoshino and I just have like a similar mindset when it comes to approaching a series. So it really is the perfect series for me, I feel like, with the exercising of Akuma, its action, its weapons, and having a weapon system. I love the artwork. It really does feel like the manga for me. With that said, just because that is a perfect manga for me doesn't automatically mean I'll put in my favorites. It'll just guarantee that I'll really enjoy it. And I do feel like its story becomes convoluted, especially in its last quarter. But regardless, I absolutely love The Gray Man. One of my favorite shonen, without a doubt. Jujutsu Kaisen. So I watched the first season of the anime, and I liked it, but I don't like it as much as pretty much everybody seems to. Like it exploded. The anime exploded. The manga exploded. The manga was the best-selling manga of 2021, and the anime was probably the most well-received of late 2020, 2021. And I liked it. I was like, I don't really see why it's so great. So I did read the manga, and it is worth reading. The manga is really good, and I do really like where the direction is going. Nothing to wow me yet. But, if this first season of JJK was so big, I think all manga readers of JJK know that it's going to be even bigger than before. So I wish it all the best. Not really a fan yet, but once again, wish all the best. Bastard. This is a manhwa series, and it's my favorite manhwa of all time. Bastard is one of the best stories I've ever read. And I try to avoid hyperbole when it comes to subjective opinion, but man, Bastard was just so consistent. Dozens of chapters where there's just ended in a cliffhanger. Jin is one of my favorite protagonists of all time. His dad is one of my favorite antagonists of all time. I love the premise. The premise of this manhwa is about a boy who hates the world, and a lot of that is owed to his dad, who is a psychopath. And the story kind of begins when Jin's like, I want to stand up to this guy. And it's amazing. It's truly amazing. It's 80 or 90 chapters. It is a story that I just never wanted to put down. I don't know if I like it more than Hell's Paradise. I'd probably rate it better than it, but in terms of enjoyment, it's really, really hard to say. But man, just so many great moments, great cliffhangers. God, I read Bastard if you haven't read it yet. It is one of my favorite. It is my favorite manhwa as of right now. It's able to blend dark tones along with being lighthearted. It has elements of comedy, elements of romance, but it is an amazing thriller. And I did not do it enough justice here. I originally wanted to do a video on it, but don't want to take up too much time. But Bastard is one of the best stories I've ever read. Nothing had ever made me want to keep reading more than Bastard, like ever. Like any book, no other series wanted to make me not put it down. So yeah, Bastard, absolutely one of my favorites. Teppu. Teppu is amazing. I love Teppu. Teppu is a MMA manga with an emphasis on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling. It's a great series. It's not like a King and Ashura where the fights are super over the top and both fighters are super bloody by the end of it. And they have broken bones, shattered skulls and such like that. But Teppu is very grounded. The highest stakes in this manga, that's only 35 chapters by the way, is just an 8-woman amateur MMA tournament. So obviously you're not going to see, anything too crazy, but the artwork is so clearly drawn. It is so coherent. is so, clearly choreographed and executed. It's like I'm watching a fight live. There's no question about what's happening, what's not happening in Tepu. So yeah, definitely one of my favorites and really underrated. Okay, so next up, Holy Land. I dropped Holy Land. I'm sorry for manga fans. Holy Land just didn't do it for me. I think that the fights were pretty entertaining. Um, and Yu's character, the main character, the MC, is very interesting, but I think pretty much all the dialogue outside of that wasn't really engaging. Now, I did read this pretty early, I feel like, and I think that my attention span has gotten longer now, so I am open to starting this again. But once again, I did not drop Holy Land because I thought it was bad, but I think it's because I was more interested in reading other series, and Holy Land wasn't resonating. By this point, I'd already read King and Ashura, and I kind of wanted that super over-the-top action, and Holy Land is grounded in reality, which is pretty cool. And once again, didn't drop it because I think it was bad, but I think my interest just fizzled out because of the dialogue. And we have a bunch that I actually dropped coming up. Toilet Bound Hanako-kun I dropped, not because it was bad, but I did just check out one volume at the I did buy one volume at the Barnes & Noble, read it, decided it wasn't for me, and then gifted it to a friend. But, it's got a cute art style, but not for me. Pandora Hearts, I dropped. Oz, the main character, is actually very interesting. But once again, when I kind of discovered what Pandora Hearts was about, I'm just like, I don't think it's for me. I don't think I'm gonna enjoy it, and I dropped it. Once again, didn't think it was bad. And same with Pluto too. What I read from Pluto was actually pretty good, but like I said, I was definitely more interested in like action at that point when I first read Pluto. And thriller and story-based series aren't really for me. It has to have like another quality to it, maybe say great artwork for it to hook me. But yeah, story's not really that big for me, and so to read a series that is narrative heavy, just not for me. I will probably read another or watch a Naoki or Isawa work, but once again, did not drop Pluto because I thought it was bad. I just was interested in reading other things. Blam is worth reading. I like the idea how a lot of the story is very ambiguous, but for me, when it comes to ambiguity, I prefer when in a narrative ambiguity is only like occasional, say with like the ending or with certain actions and things that happens. But I tend to not like it when those questions are prominent throughout the entirety of the narrative. And I have seen movies that are like that, and I'm only just getting used to movies like that, such as The Green Knight, for example. But for the case of Blam, I don't think I was ready for it when I read it. But with that said, it has some amazing artwork, so yeah, Blam is definitely worth reading. Laughing Under the Clouds is our first meh. I liked the dynamic with the three brothers, and the story, the setup was pretty interesting. But pretty much once some big event revolving around the big brother happens, I think that my interest I think the quality kind of declined throughout the series. I don't really remember the second half, but the first half was pretty good. But because of the second half, it's pretty forgettable. Dorohedoro, one of my favorite casts in all of manga, and probably my top 3 favorite art styles. This is a case where the story was pretty engaging because how it involved a lot of the characters, how a lot of their pasts kind of brought them to the present, and how that kind of will affect the significance of the story moving forward. Pretty much most of the cast had a weight to the story and moving the plot forward. Once again, great artwork, pretty good story too. Dorohedoro, it's great. It's great. Yeah, don't really have much to say other than that. Shiver. Shiver is a Junji Ito collection, and I had a really good time. I heard of the Hanging Balloon story. I think that's one of his most popular stories. And when I heard of that, the premise to it, I'm like, that sounds super interesting. Where do I read it? And I found that it was in this collection, Shiver, right here. And I really enjoyed it. I'm not really that big of a fan of horror media. I don't seek out horror normally unless it's very specific. In the case of Junji Ito, this is a horror that I could get into. Not the type to give me nightmares. A little bit, but it's definitely more visceral horror. Grounded horror, so to say. I could go into more detail about Junji Ito, but I don't want to take up too much time. But yeah, it's very good. Shiver was very good. Fire Punch is worth reading. Another Takasuki Fujimoto. Yeah, it takes some narrative leaps towards its ending, but it's a pretty good series. It's pretty dark, but it's enjoyable. It's worth reading. Blade of the Immortal. I have to put it at meh. The artwork I found to be really rough, and pretty much nothing, in my opinion, kind of matched the level of the first 3 volumes and kind of that first omnibus deluxe edition that I do own. Nothing really matched that kind of first volume. It was chaotic, um, had some gorgeous spreads, and I think that kind of lost that throughout the series. But it is a pretty interesting story. But I honestly don't really remember much of the last 10 volumes. It did have a cool ending, I think, but other than that, Blade Immortal wasn't really for me. Akumetsu is worth reading, especially if you're a fan of the likes of Death Note or Code Geass. Akumetsu I find to be a more fun protagonist than Light or Lelouch. He's a lot more chaotic, he's a lot more violent, but if you like series like that with kind of politics and kind of strategy and big brain stuff, Akumetsu is a good series to check out. I think the politics does hold it back because it's kind of nauseating. It's pretty exposition dumpy, but still a very fun series and a pretty cool take on kind of the terrorist protagonist and such like that. Basilisk, I thought was meh. I think it was creative in its artwork and its powers. It's about a war between two clans, or I guess a war between two clans igniting again. And the powers of the clan members were pretty interesting, but I think pretty much also everything else just was filled with shortcomings in terms of the story, its characters, its pacing, its presentation. But yeah, Basilisk was alright. So Sweet Home was actually the second collaboration between the writer and the illustrator of Bastard, and Sweet Home is fucking amazing, dude. I mean, obviously with the same duo working together again, it was going to be great. But pretty much the same thing that I would say about what I love about Bastard is also applicable to Sweet Home. It has so much great tension, anxiety, tons of cliffhangers, a very awesome protagonist. But this is actually another cool take on the zombie genre, zombie post-apocalyptic series, because the zombies or the creatures that are in Sweet Home have a lot of personality to it, and it's kind of based on the qualities, whether or not the physical appearance or the abilities of the creatures is kind of based off of the past and like the personality of the former person. So it's a really cool take on the genre. Another dark story, but it's arguably even more beautiful than Bastard. I don't like it as much as Bastard because I think Bastard just has the tighter narrative. But Sweet Home has a really great cast of characters, great action, and it's just so good. I love Sweet Home. I haven't read Shotgun Boy yet, which is the third collaboration between the duo, I believe. And it's still ongoing right now, so as soon as it's finished, I'm going to read Shotgun Boy, because as you can tell, I absolutely love when these two work together. Sweet Home and Bastard, read those manga. Amazing. Soul Eater. Soul Eater is a very fun shonen. Not really much to say about it. It's quite popular. Love the art style. Good cast of characters, and yeah, nothing much else to say other than that. And same with Dead Man Wonderland. I think that it is a pretty cool dark story. The scenes are crafted very well. The artwork is really good. At first, I thought it was going to be a really fun series because it kind of has this unique jail setting where they play like games and such like that. And but it is a very dark story, but very potent nonetheless. Very enjoyable. Yeah, nothing much else to say than that. So now we finally come across Berserk. Now this might be a hot take, but I'm gonna put Berserk in amazing. Now I'm gonna put it alongside Claymore. But the amazing tier is not quite in order, but it mostly is. But here's the thing: why is Berserk not in favorites? It's just not my favorite. I love Berserk, obviously. Like, I don't need to go into detail. It's Berserk. Kentaro Miura has crafted some of the best scenes in manga. He has boasted some of, if not the best artwork I've ever seen. But to me, it's not my favorite. Why? I mean, I really liked Golden Age and Conviction Arc, but I didn't start loving the series until, Millennium Falcon Empire and Fantasia. But yeah, I'm sorry that's not in my favorites, but I still think Berserk is amazing. I think what's holding it back is its dark depictions of assault. You know what I mean. It's very prevalent throughout Berserk, and just because it has those type of graphic scenes doesn't make it worse than any other series. Just because it has that content doesn't make it bad. But because I'm ranking these based on enjoyment, Berserk is the only series where I had to step away from reading it because I saw a panel that I just did not want to see. I have a very low tolerance for sexual graphic violence, so it was pretty off-putting. Once again, not critiquing Berserk because it has it, but it wasn't the best experience because of it. You know what I mean? But with that said, Berserk is Berserk. I feel like people are still gonna get mad at me because it's not my favorites. And I'm not saying Berserk is an A tier manga, but I just have to emphasize that I love Berserk, but it's just not one of my favorites. I wouldn't even say for the reason of, you know, Assault alone is why it's not my favorites, but you know, it's still great. Moving on, Cells at Work is worth reading. It's a quite fun series. If you've ever seen Osmosis Jones, that movie where it kind of goes into what if like the cells were kind of like humanized or, you know, modernized into like everyday human life. It's quite fun in that sense. You know, wholesome series, not much else to say. Slam Dunk is amazing. I don't know where I'd put it. Maybe here. Yeah, a lot of these are tied. I would probably put Sweet Home at the top of amazing, but Slam Dunk is also amazing. It is so consistently great. It has a pretty... Okay, here's the thing. The only thing keeping it from being one of my favorites is that it has a rough start, and it just needed maybe 1 or 2 matches of the same quality as like the last 3 matches in the series. If it was just a little bit longer, and it had a better start, then Slam Dunk would be one of my favorites. But with that, I don't need to go into too much detail on why I love Slam Dunk. It is one of the most beloved shonen of all time. Such consistent engagement. All the matches are extremely entertaining. It's got a lot of heart. You know, the team is pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into playing the game of basketball, whether or not they love basketball or they just want to win. It's got a lot of heart, and you can see that from the amazing artwork by Takehiko Inoue. Uzumaki, one of the most well-known horror manga series. Very good, very enjoyable. Don't need to go into much detail. It's Junji Ito. It's Uzumaki. What do I gotta say? Yu Yu Hakusho. This might be a hot take, but I just think it was worth reading. I really wanted to get into the series. I tried the anime. I didn't really like it that much. And I did find that the manga was less dated in its artwork. I did understand that the artwork did have a decline due to Togashi's declining health, but I found the manga to be better, but not something that I'm a fan of. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's good. Good action, good cast, but yeah, it was mostly not mostly, but it did have its shortcomings, and it wasn't enough to make me a fan. But that said, I still enjoyed it. I'd probably put it like, fairly high in the worth reading section. So yeah, good. So look back. This was the one shot Takasugi Fujimoto recently dropped. Author of Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch. And it kind of depicts, you know, the work that a aspiring manga artist would have to go through, and it is pretty potent. It is pretty cool. So yeah, worth reading. All right, coming up upon the final stretch right here, The Horizons. This is a manhwa. I like to call this series Grave of the Fireflies, but if it was a manhwa. So if you've seen Grave of the Fireflies, you know that you could assume that The Horizon has a lot of pain, pretty good amount of suffering, and I'm going to put this in the very enjoyable tier. Not to say that this is a series you read for enjoyment, because it is heartbreaking at times. It's about a story about a boy and a girl trying to survive during this period of war and all the suffering that goes along with it, with them as well as other people. But that did make it more potent as a result. You know, I probably smiled the least when reading this series compared to all the rest of the manga and manhwa, but it is very potent, powerful at the end of the day. Very good read too. So, yeah, The Horizon. The Breaker, a very popular manhwa that I did not really get into. I did finish it though, and here's the thing: I expected a higher quantity of fights, but it had a little bit more politics, you know, relating to clans and history and such like that than actual martial arts. The artwork is great, and when the fight scenes do happen, they are good, but the quantity was far less than I thought it was going to be, and because of that, it wasn't as enjoyable. I'm not going to critique a series based on my expectations, but I think that even expectations aside, it would not have nearly as much fights as I would want it to be in order to for me to enjoy it more. I mean, because as you've seen, I love King and Ashura. I love Teppu. You know what I mean? And those series has definitely a higher quantity of fights. And after being used to that, yeah, the Windbreaker probably wasn't the best for me. So it is there. Ooh, but Ajin. Ajin is pretty underrated. And I would say it's so close to one of my favorites. I love Ajin. It's basically about these demi-humans. That's the alternate title, Ajin Demi-Human. And demi-humans are basically people who can't die. Like when they're killed, they are brought back to life. And it was so cool. It's such a cool premise and a cool power system. You know what I mean? Quote unquote power system. I love the approach to fights and battles in Ajin. If Ajin are people who can't die, how do normal humans fight Ajins? How do Ajins fight humans? How do other demi-humans fight each other? I loved how they approach the battles in this. It's very creative, very good. Sato is probably my favorite antagonist that I've ever come across in a manga. Like, he is just an antagonist that is bad. You know that he's bad, but he's so good at doing what he's doing that you can't help but be like, I kind of respect what you just did there. I kind of respect how you got out of that situation. Ajin is amazing. It's pretty underrated. Oh man, it's close to S tier, or not S tier. Sorry, this is not letter tiers, but it's close to my favorites. But it's not quite there because it just kind of didn't reach that yet. I think that it took all of its character points and just put it all into Sato. I'll just say Sato. There are some interesting characters, but let's be honest, the best stuff only happened when Sato was involved. So that's probably the only thing holding it back. But Ajin's amazing. Alice in Borderland was really, really good. I haven't seen the show. I've only read the manga. And basically, Ajin Alice in Borderland is that story about, people being transported to a different version of Japan, and they have to participate in these death games, or else, if they win the games, they'll live. If they lose the games, they'll die. And so the story kind of poses a lot of questions, like, where are we? What are these games for? How do we escape this, world where we have to participate in these death games? And with all the potential reasons for these death games to be occurring and all the possibilities, I could have been easily disappointed with, what the true answer actually was. But I think Alice in Borderlands nailed the ending, so it was very good as a result. Check it out. GTO is a very beloved shonen. It's probably unpopular that I'm putting it in worth reading. I thought it was good. Didn't think it was that great, but it's good. Onizuka's a little too perverted for me. I don't really get a kick out of perverted characters. That doesn't mean that they're bad or whatever, but it's good. It's good. Yeah, one of my favorite anime of all time is Assassination Classroom, and there's no doubt that the manga cover Assassination Classroom took inspiration from GTO. It is evident GTO's influence, and so that's why I got a kick out of reading it. And last but not least, Sunken Rock. Sunken Rock I dropped. Now, Sunken Rock has some god tier artwork, some of the best artwork I've ever seen. But what made me drop it was just too sexualized for me. And once again, just because a series has, sexual content doesn't make it bad. You know what I mean? I think it's okay for an author to put, fan service or, negative sexual situations. You know what I mean? They can do that as they please. But for me, it came to a point in Sunken Rock where it was so excessive that it detrimented from the story. Like, I don't need like a panty shot for every single woman that appears on screen, or, a situation where every single woman has to end up naked, whether or not it's negative or positive. I don't need that to happen like every single volume. And that's why it fizzled out my interest in this series. Once again, it doesn't make it bad. And actually, for all these dropped series, I would consider the series I put in meh, worse than the dropped ones. But I dropped it because it was just too much for me. With Berserk, the content in Berserk, there's a point to it. You know what I mean? And it didn't detriment from the story. In Sunken Rock, I feel like there are like multiple volumes that I had read before I dropped it that was just all meant for the sake of setting up and executing these situations where a woman has to end up naked for whatever reason. And I don't really have anything else to say other than that. But by all means, if you haven't read these drop series yet, please read them yourself and come up with your own opinion. And like I said, I don't think these series are necessarily bad, but I just lost interest in them. And yeah, that does it. This is my official manga list tier ranking. So we have all these here. You know what? If I make a top 5, might as well just have 5 in the favorites. So yeah, this looks pretty good to me. So in the favorites, we have Hell's Paradise, Bastard, Spy Family, Grand Blue Dreaming, and Sweet Home. And then in the manga that would follow suit is Ajin, Slam Dunk, Claymore, Berserk, Omniscient Reader, King and Ashura, D Greyman, Teppu, and Dorohedoro. So yeah, these are my favorite series, and here is the tier list. Once again, this is just my opinion, and I'm sorry if we don't really agree on anything. But with that said, this is all subjective. So please leave down your placements for your manga. Please leave down your favorite manga, what you agree with, what you disagree with. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Keeps me going. And with that said, let's just end out the year. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you next time.